24.7 million atom units harvested in Rapture's final year. This number isn't just a resource tally, it's a ledger of human potential turned to currency. The city's objectivist dream collapsed not from scarcity, prioritized a profit over people commodity. Andrew Ryan's no altruism mantra became a machine grinding lives into plasmid fuel in debt human cells. Experiments a debt smuggled stolen collectors science to ledger written in Columbia human cells, plasmids promised flight, bathysphere descends, the lighthouse flickers, Comstock whispers, would you kindly, a question, a transaction. Atom wasn't just a power up, it was the engine of a dying machine, a currency, a commodity, a debt collector's ledger written in human cells. Plasmids promised flight, vigors sold resurrection. Each vial a mortgage on potential, each little sister a factory bound to harvest it. Rapture's spires rose on the backs of those who couldn't afford their own evolution. The market didn't fail, it fulfilled. Every transaction a silent auction of flesh, every innovation a patent on survival. Who decides which dreams are profitable, which souls fuel the grid? The bathysphere's descent was never about depth, it was a plunge into the arithmetic of extinction. How many lives balanced the books before the algorithm turned on its makers? Progress has a price. Rapture paid in lives, who will settle the bill next? Andrew Ryan's Rapture, 1946, a city where talent, not charity, dictated worth. By 1953, Atom transformed ambition into currency. Plasmids promised power, but at a cost. The Golden Age thrived not on resource, but on a system that turned human potential into profit. Workers harvested atom, bodies became balance sheets. Little sisters, hollowed, fueled the machine. What begins as progress often ends as prison. By 1958, the algorithm devoured its architects. Splicers clawed at the streets. Civil war drowned objectivism in blood. Rapture's collapse wasn't a resource failing, it was a philosophy fracturing. A mirror to every utopia built on extraction. When the market demands more than flesh can give, what collapses first, the system or the soul beneath it? Andrew Ryan's vision of self-made divinity hinged on a lie, that Atom was a prize, not a wound. Little sisters crawled through the dead, their gloved hands milking the last breath from corpses to feed the machines. Plasmids promised flight, vigors promised control. Both demanded more bodies, more blood, more of what the earth would not replenish. The market did not weep when graveyards emptied, it calculated. A city built on infinite extraction is a city built on infinite debt. Rapture's spires gleamed while its underbelly rotted, a rot that began in the lungs of children forced to harvest what the living had lost. Atom was never the fuel, it was the ledger. Every vial drained was a tally in the ledger of human cost. Every power bought was a signature on the IOU. What happens when the currency of a civilization is the life force of the dead? The answer is written in rusting pipelines and shattered glass. The little sisters did not choose this. The ones who made them choose it are long buried in the same ledgers they helped fill. Power does not corrupt, power reveals. It revealed that Rapture's God was not man nor money, but the hollow-eyed hunger of a system that turned corpses into capital. And when the bodies ran out, well, even Andrew Ryan could not buy what the dead could not give. The last atom was extracted from the last hope. What remains is a question no economy can answer. How many souls does it take to lift a city, and what falls fastest when they shatter? The little sisters did not harvest atom, they were harvested. Tenenbaum and Suchong did not create a system, they carved a throat. Children stolen from the surface, their bodies hollowed into vessels, their screams sterilized into efficiency. Each sister a walking ledger entry, each extraction a profit margin. The big daddies did not protect, they enforced. Those ironclad husks, once men, now bound to circuits of guilt and duty, their love a corporate mandate. How many little heads were cradled not in care but in calculation? How many hearts were ruptured to fuel a city's arrogance? The factories of Rapture did not reek of oil or steel. They reeked of salt and blood. Suchong's labs, cold and clinical, hummed with the wet whir of drills burrowing into skulls, siphoning the raw, luminous atom that pulsed like stolen starlight. The sisters' eyes, wide and vacant, were not side effects. They were the product. A city that traded souls for supremacy could not afford sentiment. Corpses were recycled. Flesh became feedstock. The dead were not buried, they were billed. What kind of God builds a utopia on the backs of children? Rapture's architects called it progress. They called it survival. They did not see the cracks forming in their ledger. Every atom vial was a debt, every little sister a defaulted loan. The more they took, the more the resource demanded, not in quantity and quality. Innocence, it turned out, was not infinite. The body horror of their industrial paternity was not just the sisters' suffering. It was the rot eating through the system itself. A currency built on trauma could not sustain a city. It could not even sustain a day. The collapse was not sudden. It was a slow, gurgling unraveling. The big daddies programmed to obey began to break. The sisters, once empty, started to remember. And the economists, too late, realized what all economies eventually learn. You cannot mine humanity without becoming the mine. Rapture did not fall because Adam ran out. It fell because it had never been about Adam at all. It had been about the price of a dream and who would pay it. They called it a miracle, a fuel, a key. Adam burned bright in Rapture's veins, but its fire was theft. Sea slug cells twisted into currency, each vial a stolen breath, each syringe a debt paid in flesh. The lie was not that Adam could be harvested. The lie was that it could be paid for. Rapture's architects built a temple to progress, but their altar was a child's spine. The little sisters, husks and ghosts, were not workers, they were the ledger. Every drop extracted, every life unraveled, fed the machine that promised transcendence. Yet the machine had no bottom, no saturation. The more Adam flowed, the hungrier the system grew. You call it a resource. But resources deplete. Adam was a hunger dressed as innovation, a hunger that turned men into monsters, cities into graveyards. The market crashed not because Adam ran dry, but because its price was never meant to be paid, not by the living. Rapture drowned not in water, but in its own arithmetic. A civilization that measured worth in vials, not souls, could not long survive. Its collapse was not an accident. It was a reckoning. The dream was never free. And those who built on bone cannot blame the storm. Adam wasn't a miracle, it was a market, a commodity traded in shadow, its value rising as its cost became human. The little sisters, Rapture's labor, were not saved but spent. Each vial drained until nothing remained. The more they harvested, the faster the rot spread. Rapture's spire is our warning. When potential becomes profit, collapse is not an end. It is an arithmetic. We are all in the equation now. Adam did not glow blue in the dark. It burned white hot with the fever of a system devouring itself. Rapture's factories did not refine oil or steel. They refined human potential ripped from children, sold as currency, spent until the spender became the spent. The little sisters did not collect Adam. They were Adam, flesh-bound vaults, their lungs singing with the breath of 1,000 shattered deals. Ryan's city did not fail because men reached for godhood. It collapsed because men priced godhood at a 20% markup. Every splicer's gnarled hand, every harpoonist's snarling grin was a ledger entry. The more power you bought, the more you became a line item. Genetic miracles were not miracles. They were interest payments on a debt no soul could repay. The city's spires did not pierce the ocean. They probed the hollows of a dream, that labor could be harvested, that flesh could be franchised, that the human spirit could be mined and monetized. What does a market do when its most valuable resource is also its most precious lifeblood? It drains it, it bottles it, it sells it out. The little sisters were not saved, they were liquidated. Their screams were not tragedies, they were quarterly reports. The glow in their eyes was not innocence. It was the last flicker of a soul turned into capital. Rapture's economy was not a system. It was a sacramentone where the bread was human will and the wine was human pain. Every transaction was a covenant. Every splicer's wail was a hymn. The city did not drown in water. It sank under the weight of its own arithmetic. For every soul turned into a resource, a counterbalance was due. The equation was never wrong. Only the men who wrote it were. And now the equation writes itself. The arithmetic is not in the tides. It is in the hands of those who still believe profit is a virtue. The ledger never closes. The final entry is always you. The city's veins pulsed with a lie. Adam was never fuel, it was the ledger's ink, the price tag on a soul. Rapture's architects called it progress. They called it freedom. But every vial drained was a choice stolen, every transaction a chain forged in the name of potential. The little sisters did not harvest Adam, they were harvested. Their screams were the system's heartbeat. A market cannot hunger and weep at the same time. What is human potential when it bends to the profit margin? A currency, a commodity, a resource to be mined, then discarded. The economists had equations, the philosophers had slogans. None had a word for the cost of reducing a life to its extractable parts. When the splicers roamed, they were not monsters. They were the arithmetic of desperation, freedom subtracted, control added. The surface world watches and whispers, "Don't let this happen to us," but the ledger is the same. The names are different. A child's labor in a factory, a worker's life in a spreadsheet, same tides, same chains. Rapture did not fall because Adam ran dry. It fell because its people forgot they were more than their value. The final transaction was not in the vaults, it was in the silence after the last little sister was taken. The sea claims the ruins, the sea does not judge. But the question remains, when your potential is someone else's product, what is left of you? The glow of Rapture's spires once promised utopia, now they leer like broken teeth. Adam was never the villain, it was the ledger. Every vial drained, every soul hollowed was an entry in the books. The little sisters didn't choose to be husks, they were born into them. Their screams echoed through the pipelines, drowned out by the clank of cash registers. What kind of God builds a city on the premise that human suffering is a trade-in? Ryan's objectivism was a gavel pounding flesh into currency. The sea doesn't care about spreadsheets, it swallows ledgers whole. You think the collapse was fire and brine? No, it was the silence after the last child was harvested, the empty-eyed adults who built this nightmare, staring into the void where their purpose was. A system that reduces life to raw material starves the soul first. The ironies pile like rusted rebar, the more they took, the less they became. Even the atom, that so-called miracle, turned toxic. A poison that couldn't sustain, only consume. What does this ask of you? To see the rapture in every unchecked system. To name the quiet harvests happening, no labor, data, hope funneled into vaults while the world bleeds. The sea claims the ruins, but tides rise elsewhere. Will you let the next city burn, or will you crack the books? The choice isn't abstract. It's in every transaction, every silent scream. What kind of God will you be? The glow of Adam was never the sin. It was the ledger entries, the hum of drills that carved potential from flesh, not the other way around. A city built on the premise that souls could be collateral. Every little sister's whisper, drowned in the churn of cash registers. Their eyes vacant as futures erased. What does a currency demand when it drowns in its own metaphor? Rapture's spires did not crumble from genetic leaps, but from the weight of a lie told in every transaction, that humanity could be mined. Andrew Ryan's hymn to self was a feedback loop. The more he silenced the weak, the louder the void roared. The sisters, trapped in their gowns of seaweed and sorrow, were not assets. They were the last gasp of a world that might have been. Their silence was the death rattle of tomorrow. When the market for little miracles collapsed, it was not Adam that failed. It was the calculus that saw children as raw material. The machines still were in the ruins. The glow persists, toxic and cold, a monument to what happens when ideology becomes its own prison. Ryan's genius was a mirror, twisted. It reflected every boardroom where profit bleeds into morality, every vault where the cries of the unseen are stockpiled as strength. The sea claims rapture now. But the tides do not erase the pattern. What grows when you plant a soul in concrete, a city of ghosts, a warning etched in rust and bone? The little sisters were not a program. They were the price paid in futures, paid in the language of a God who believed in nothing. The lesson is not in atom power, it is in the hands that held it. What do you call a system that turns hope into fuel? Call it a parable, call it a requiem, call it the sound of the future, choking on its own silence. The bathysphere ascends through Rapture's bones. Andrew Ryan's voice curls from the dark. Would you kindly? A question, a command, a death rattle. Adam was never fuel, it was the ledger. Every vial drained, every soul fractured, was a transaction in a faith without God. The little sisters were not resources. They were the arithmetic of desperation cogs in a machine that ran on the calculus of human will. Rapture's spires did not crumble from want. They collapsed under the weight of their own equation. What is a life worth when reduced to a commodity? Objectivism's ruin was not a failure of ideology, it was a failure of arithmetic. The more Adam fed the engine, the more the engine demanded, until there were no new frontiers to blade, no unclaimed potential to harvest. The market could not sustain itself, the people could not either. Ryan's city was a mirror, its shattering reflects our own, a world where innovation is a debt and progress a loan that must be repaid in flesh. The bathysphere breaks the surface. The voice lingers, a specter in the static. Would you kindly? The screen fades, the question remains. The voice that lingers asks, what becomes of a city when human potential is mined like coal? Rapture's atom wasn't a miraclate, was a ledger. Every strand harvested, every little sister's scream, fed the machine that promised liberation. The Ludes twins didn't just steal plasmid research, they forged a new currency. In Colombia, that theft became Vigor-bottled rage sold to the highest bidder. 2 cities, 1 delusion, that progress can be separated from its cost. Rapture drowned in its own debt. Colombia burns, its sky choked by the same smoke. What do you pay for second life? The answer